In this video, we're going to work on example 3.26 from your book. If you'd like to follow along, open the Chapter 3 classwork.xlsx workbook from My Courses and click on the EX 3.26 worksheet tab. In this exercise, they're going to ask us to create a cross tabulation and calculate the number of sales by region and by product. This is actually very difficult to do without a pivot table and very easy to do with the pivot table. So first, creating the cross tabulation without a pivot table. We're going to click in cell K4 and we're going to click the Formulas tab. In the Function Library group, we're going to click More Functions, Statistical, and then Count Ifs, Count IFS. If you do not see this function, it means that you're using an older version of Excel and you can't follow along until we go into the pivot tables. So we're going to click our Count Ifs. And now our first criteria range is going to be the region. So for my first criteria range, I'm going to click on cell B4 and select the range B4 all the way down to the bottom, B475. Now before I click away, I'm going to hit my F4 key on my keyboard to turn that into an absolute cell reference, because we can't copy it fully, but we can copy it partially, as you'll see as we move along. So our first criteria on row 1, we want to make sure that it's from the East region. So in our criteria 1, we're going to type double quote and then the word East. Unfortunately, we cannot use cell references in the criteria. That would just make this a heck of a lot easier, but we can't do it with the count if or the count ifs. So notice we get 98. Now we're going to click in criteria range 2. And criteria range 2 is going to be the product. So we're going to select the range G4 down to G475. And just like we did before clicking away, we're going to hit that F4 key on our keyboard to make sure that our criteria range 2 says $G $4 to $G $475, and Mac users, you can just type your dollar signs. But the dollar signs are absolutely necessary, otherwise this is going to be the only formula that is going to work. Now in criteria 2, we're going to type double quote and the word book. And close our double quote. And notice we get 56, which matches our cross tabulation in the middle of page 83 on your book. So now we're going to click OK. Now, because the range is set in column A, the only thing we have to change is east to north, south, and west. So I'm going to make sure that I'm clicked on cell K4. K4 is the active cell. I'm going to hover over the fill handle and drag it down 4 rows. Notice it all says 56 because it's all asking book and east, but I'm going to double click in cell K5, which enables me to edit the formula right in the cell. And I'm going to change the word east in the middle of the formula to the word north. That's the only thing I need to change. Now I'm going to make sure that K6 is the active cell. I'm going to double click and I'm just going to backspace through the word east and change that to south. Then hit enter. Notice how the green triangle went away. And then I'm going to double click cell K7. You could also not double click and just edit it in the formula bar. I think it's easier to edit it in the cell. I'm going to double click the cell and change my east to west and hit enter. Notice how that column now matches the book: 56, 43, 62, and 100. Now all we'd have to do from column K, we can copy it from column L and just edit the book to DVD. So I'm going to select the range, K4 to K7. I'm going to use the fill handle to copy that over to column L. And notice that my ranges that I'm searching are going to be okay because I used an absolute cell reference. I'm going to double click cell L4, and where it says book, I'm just going to backspace and change that to DVD. I'm going to do the same thing to cell L5. I'm going to double click, and where it says book, I'm going to change that to DVD, making sure to keep the double quotes, very important. Hit enter. I'm going to double click cell L7. I'm going to change book to DVD, so click at the back of the end of the book before the double quote and just backspace and type DVD and hit enter. And finally, the same thing in cell L7, double click, click at the end of book, backspace and change it to DVD and hit enter. Now to total everything up, I'm going to select the range K8 to L8. We're still on the formulas tab. Just hit the auto sum button. You don't need to hit the down arrow. The down arrow gives you other options, but we just want to sum. So just hit the sigma and notice that we get 261 and 211, which matches the book. Now we're going to do the same thing in column M. Select the range M4 to M8 and do the same thing. Just hit the auto sum button. Don't bother hitting the down arrow, just the button. And we have now summed up all of our rows as well as all of our columns. Now it's funny because it took a lot of effort to do this with using our COUNTIFs, which isn't even available in earlier versions of Excel. If we wanted to do this with a pivot table, which we actually do in example 3.27, it's actually very, very easy. So I'm going to click back into cell A1. Now I'm going to click any cell within the worksheet. It doesn't matter which one. I don't want to click within my cross tabulations, but I want to click any cell within my sales transactions worksheet, Then I'm going to click insert and then pivot table. Notice how it selected the correct range as long as I've selected one cell within our table. Now, instead of a new worksheet, I'm going to click existing worksheet. I'm going to click in the location box, which enables me to move around a little bit. And I'm going to click in cell O2. Don't bother adding this to the data model. We'll go over this in a little while. Click OK. Drag region into the row area. Drag product into the column area, and then drag amount into the sigma values area. After you drag amount into the sigma values area, you should be within the pivot table tools group in the Analyze tab. Over in the active field, you should see active field sum of amount. Just click field settings right below that. If you can't find that field settings, another way to get to it is in the sigma values area. Click the down arrow under sum of amount and click value field settings. Either place gets you to the same place, and then instead of sum, just single click count and click OK. If we now close our pivot table fields dialog box, you will see that we have now, with pivot tables, created exactly the same chart. It's just in a slightly different order. Now let's calculate our percentage of sales. So if you take a look at the book, they want to do percentage of sales by rows. So to calculate our percentage of sales for the East, we would first take 56 and divide by 98, and then 42 and divide by 98. So in order to do that, we're going to click in cell K12. I'm going to type equals. I'm going to tell it to take cell K4, and we're going to divide that by M4. Now, in order to make sure that we can copy this formula to column L, before we click away, we're going to hit our F4 key until our reference says $M4. So hit that F4 until it says $M4, or you could just type the $ before the M. So what's going to happen is it's going to change the numerator. So as we copy it down column K, it'll change it to K5, K6, K7. As we move it to column L, it'll change it to L4, L5, L6, L7, but it will always divide by the value in column M in the same row that we're on currently. So we hit enter. If we want them to show us percentages before we copy them, we're going to click back on cell K12, making sure that you're on the Home tab. In the number group, click the icon that looks like a percent style. Click the increase decimal button 2 to the right just one time. So we have our 57.1%. And now we can use the fill handle if we want to copy it out. And then copy it down to West. And notice that all of our percentages match. So we have just learned how to do a cross tabulation using COUNTIF statement and also using a pivot table.